Hey Sewers, I'm Kathleen and today I'll be teaching you how to sew the West Palm cocktail dress. This is the latest free sewing pattern from movefabrics.com and you can download it via the link below. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to attach a lining and attach a zipper, all before sending this off to the runway. But hold up a minute, first we need to break out our designer sewing planners because the West Palm cocktail dress is a mood masterpiece. We're going to do a croquis sketch to plan out our garment, place our swatches to figure out which fabric we are going to use, and figure out where we would like to place our vintage crystal trims. I decided to go with this premium polyester satin from the Gavia collection because this fabric is sleek, lustrous, and affordable. But you can explore our wide array of luxury fabrics at moodfabrics.com. For this design, I've decided to attach my vintage crystal trims to the hemline of the dress. It will add such a nice embellishment and give the dress a luxury finish. While you're at Mood, don't forget to grab your zipper, thread, and vintage crystal trims because we're off to the workroom. Links are in the description below. So we've gone ahead and have already printed and assembled our sewing pattern, as well as cut out our fabric. For more information on how to do that, you can check out our tutorial on pattern assembly here. First step will be to take your front self pattern and thread trace where the dart ends. Thread tracing is an alternative way to mark your fabric without leaving residue, like if you use chalk or tracing paper. To thread trace, thread your hand needle and stick it through all layers of the fabric at the point of the dart. You should leave long tails so that when you remove the pattern piece, the thread stays in place, marking your fabric. Next, slowly pull apart both layers of fabric, making sure that the thread does not get pulled from either layer. Then all you have to do is clip the thread and both front self layers will be thread traced. Our next step is pinning our darts. You will use your thread tracing as a guide to place your first pin. Then place a pin on the edge of the fabric and continue pinning at an equal distance. Make sure to repeat this step on your opposite front self piece before taking both pieces to the sewing machine. We're going to sew a straight stitch, starting at 1/2 inch and gradually sewing until we meet the tip of our dart. If you're not confident in staying within your seam allowance, here's a quick sewing hack. You can move your needle so that the edge of your foot aligns with your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Use your ruler to double check, but using this hack, all you have to do is line up the raw edge of your fabric to the foot of the sewing machine, and you will have perfect seam allowance throughout your whole garment. If you like that sewing hack, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Now that your darts have been sewn, you can remove your thread tracing. Then grab your 2 tails and tie them in a double knot to secure your stitching. Lastly, you can clip any extra threads, then repeat the same steps on the opposite side of the bodice. Okay, so we just went to the ironing board and pressed our darts. This is what they should look like. Now we're gonna take our front skirt piece that was cut on fold, and we're gonna remove the pin. And now we're gonna take right sides together and pin along this curve. I like to pin both of the ends first so that you can evenly distribute the ease. Now you're going to repeat on the next side. Now we're going to sew a straight stitch from here to there and then repeat on the other side. So I just got back from the ironing board and I pressed open the seams so that they lay flat on the body. Now we're gonna grab our back panel of the dress and we're gonna do right sides together, making sure that this notch matches our seam. And we're just gonna pin that all along the side seam. So make sure your notch matches your seam and then pin it in place so you don't lose it. And now you'll just evenly pin all along the side seam. So now that we're done pinning, we can take this to the machine and sew a straight stitch down both of side seams. Okay, so I just got back from the ironing board and I pressed open side seams. This is what it should look like. And now we have our full self done. And now you just repeat all the same steps for your lining pieces. Make sure to thread trace again on both of your lining bodice pieces. Pin them, then sew your darts, starting at a 1/2 inch seam allowance and sewing to the tip of the dart. Be sure to remove your thread tracing and secure the tails again with a double knot. Pin both bodice pieces to the front skirt and sew them together with the straight stitch. Finally, grab your back panels, pin and sew them to the front, and now we have our duplicate lining for our West Palm cocktail dress. Hey guys, welcome back. We just finished sewing up our lining. We repeated the same steps we did for ourselves, and now we're going to attach our lining to ourselves by pinning right sides together at the neckline and the hem. So you're gonna want to pin along this edge and this edge, going all the way down to center back, and you're gonna repeat that on the other side. When you get to side seam, make sure you align them so that they're in the same place when you sew. So now that we have pinned our lining and self together, we're gonna sew a straight stitch all across the neckline, and then we're gonna do an understitch. While sewing the neckline, when you get to a sharp corner, make sure to drop your needle and lift up your presser foot so that you can pivot the fabric. This will ensure that you have a nice crisp edge while sewing. So we're gonna use our Mood Metallic Gold shears to clip our seam allowance so that when we turn it over, we get a nice sharp edge. I really love using my metallic gold shears from Mood because they're super sharp and they're super cute. Now we're gonna use our loop turner to turn this portion of the garment inside out. If you are having trouble with your loop turner, I recommend using tweezers to help guide the bulk out of your neckline. Once your neckline has been successfully turned out, we are going to go to the ironing board and press. So now that we have attached our lining to the neckline, we are going to work on the hem of the dress. This is where we will want to incorporate our vintage crystal trim. We're going to sandwich it in between the lining and the self in order to get that nice clean finish. Make sure that the trim is right sides together with the self, so that when you flip it, you will only see the sparkling crystals attached to your hem. Since you have a 1/2 inch seam allowance at center back, you will want to avoid placing your trim there. If you sew over your trim, you may break a needle. To avoid this, grab your ruler and make sure to measure 1/2 inch and place a pin, so that you know where to start your trim. Sandwich your trim in between your self and lining, and pin all along the hem. With our hems pinned, we are going to go to the machine and sew them with a straight stitch. Another sewing tip is to switch out your presser foot with the zipper foot. This will allow you to get extra close to the edge while sewing for a crisp finish. Lastly, flip your garment inside out and head back to the ironing board for a nice press. So I just got back from the ironing board and I'm so excited with how this turned out. It's so pretty. The next step we're gonna do is how to attach the zipper. Lay out your dress flat on the table and align your zipper with center back. Make sure that the pull is facing the right direction and unzip it. We need to sew the zipper with right sides together, so make sure to flip it and align the teeth of the zipper at our 1/2 inch seam allowance before pinning. You can also use your ruler to double check that the zipper teeth are at 1/2 inch seam allowance as you pin. Pin all the way down to the notch at center back, making sure to only pin the zipper to the self fabric. In a later step, I will show you how to clean finish the lining. Now we're going to head back to the machine using our zipper foot once again to sew a straight stitch all the way to our notch. With one side of our zipper sewn, we are going to test it to make sure that it zips up nicely. Now we are going to repeat the same steps for the opposite side of the zipper. Make sure the zipper teeth are flipped upwards at a 1/2 inch seam allowance before pinning and sewing. There we go, and that's how you sew an invisible zipper. Make sure that it zips up, then we will trim the excess of our zipper. Now we are going to head back to the machine. Okay, so since we have finished with the zipper foot attachment, we're just gonna switch it back to the regular foot. And we're gonna move back our needle so that it's back at a 1/2 inch with the foot. Sew a tack across your zipper tape by your center back notch so that the zipper will now have a backstop. Now we are going to close our center back for both lining and self. Bring the right sides together of your self, match your raw edges, and pin. Pin all the way up from hemline to the start of the zipper, and repeat the same process for lining pieces. Before we sew, make sure that the length of the self from your zipper to the hemline matches the length of your lining. Both my lining and self measure 11 inches. Now we are going to sew a straight stitch at 1/2 inch. So we just finished closing up our center back, seamlessly melting it into our zipper. And now we're gonna go to the ironing board and press it. With our zipper pressed, we are going to flip our garment inside out to clean finish our lining to the zipper by hand sewing it down both sides. Make sure to clip any frayed edges, then we are going to fold the raw edges back and pin the lining to the tape of the zipper. Continue hand sewing your zipper, repeatedly catching the zipper and the lining until it's secured all the way up to the top of your dress. Repeat these same steps for the opposite side of your zipper. With your zipper complete, you can turn your dress right sides out and clip any frayed edges that you see. The only steps we have left are creating our bow and installing the hook and eyes. Okay, so now we're gonna start the bow and we're just gonna pin along the side seam all the way down. So now that we have this pinned, we're gonna take it to our machine and sew a straight stitch. With our side seam stitch, we are going to trim down our seam allowance with our Mood Golden Shears. The next step is going to be turning our bow inside out. Since our bow is wide enough, we don't even need a loop turner. We can turn it inside out by hand. Once your bow is turned out, we can take it to the ironing board and press. Now, since we're done pressing it, this is what it should look like. You're gonna notice you have an open edge to it, so all you're gonna wanna do is fold back the seam allowance 1/2 inch. With the edge stitch finished, here is our completed first part of the bow. Now we are going to grab our other pattern piece and repeat the exact same steps. Pin our side seams, then sew a straight stitch. Once it is sewn, flip the piece inside out, then head over to the iron and press. Next, fold in your raw edges 1/2 inch, pin, then close each of the openings with an edge stitch. With both of our bow pieces complete, we are going to shape them into the bow itself. Take one end and create a loop. Then create a symmetrical loop on your opposite side. You can play around with the size of your loops and tails until you find the shape that you prefer. Once you have the shape of your bow set, we are going to use our smaller piece to secure it in place. Use your hand needle once again to stitch it closed on the back side of the bow. Okay, so now we have our completed bow, and the next step is to attach it to the dress. It's so pretty. The last step before we can attach the bow is to blind stitch these two pieces of our neckline together so that we have one continuous neckline. To attach the bow, center it on your neckline, and then we are going to use our hand needle again and stitch it on both the top and bottom of the bow to secure it. With the bow attached, the final step is to finish our neck closure. First, cut off any frayed edges and turn them in. Pin it in place, and then we are going to take it to the machine and sew it closed with an edge stitch. Then repeat these steps for the opposite side. With our raw edges now clean finished, we are going to choose an option for our closure. Here I have a bunch of different size options of hook and eyes from Dritz. For this particular project, I'm going to use the number 2 size option because it has a great balance of both size and structure. Before we attach our hook and eyes, we are first going to determine their placement. Hold both pieces onto the neckline and try to lock them. Make sure that the hook and eye are obscured by the neckline and closed nicely before permanently hand stitching them in place. Grab your threaded hand needle and tie the ends together. Insert the needle into the fabric and then into the closure, repeating that process of looping the thread around the closure until it's secure. Make sure to only go through the lining fabric though, so that the stitches will not show on the face of the fabric. Once one side of the closure is secure, bring the needle through the fabric again and back out on the other side of the closure. Continue hand sewing until both sides of the eye are secure. We can repeat this process on the hook as well. Once both the hook and eye have been secured, we will do one final test to make sure that they close properly. Then, your West Palm cocktail dress will be complete. So here we have our completed West Palm cocktail dress. We have our cute little bow and our vintage crystal trim. And now you know what time it is. It's time for the runway. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to download the free West Palm cocktail dress sewing pattern from Mood Society blog and show us what you can do using the hashtag #MadeWithMood. Like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified when our next sewing video is released. What type of pattern would you like to see from Mood next? Let us know in the comments below.